Yes, you prayed to God for a miracle and you did not get the miracle. So, what is the reason? And everybody starts giving you different reasons. Maybe it's because you didn't have this and that, and maybe it's because this stood in the way. But tonight, we're going to discover a couple of answers that would help you when you get to that season of life. Once again, welcome to Saturday Night Conversations. This is the meetup for Christians who want to live intentional lives. And the goal is pretty simple. We come together so we can discover how to make Christ-focused decisions. Basically, decisions in every aspect of our lives, whether it's in marriage, work, life, literally that. And the goal is pretty simple. We want to be able to live a life that makes God happy, creating the kind of change that God wants in our world. And if you're finding me for the first time, my name is T-O-L-A with a dot under the O. My Nigerian friends call me Tola, and let's get straight into tonight's conversation. Now, before we go straight into this conversation of why, I think there are a couple of things I really want to start off with. And the first thing is this: sometimes it is not your fault. I think that's the first thing we need to let out of the bag. Sometimes the reason why God does not give you a miracle, sometimes it is not your fault. Number two, sometimes it is not because you lack faith. I repeat, sometimes it is not because you lack faith. Now, what we have to realize is that miracles by their nature are God's way of breaking the natural order of things. Thank you very much, Biola, for joining. Miracles are God's way of breaking the natural order of things. So sometimes you ask God for miracles, sometimes you don't ask God even for the miracles, and God decides to do it. And so what we're going to do here is this quickly. I'm just going to have us go through a couple of people in the Bible to understand this sort of situation. A couple of people in the Bible, how does it work? If you look at the normal ingredients that most of you talk about in terms of ingredients for you to get miracles, these guys did not have the ingredients. And just to make sure we have a balance, I'm going to do two people in the Old Covenant and two people in the New Covenant, so that at least everybody is fully represented. The first of them is Our Lady Sarah. Yes, Sarah, when it came to Isaac, guess what? The angel was talking to Abraham, and he told Abraham that, look, by this time when I come, Abraham is going to have a baby. Guess what? Abraham laughed and was like, yabba dabba do. Oh yes, I really am going to have a baby. But guess what? She had a baby. And the reason why she had a baby, it was beyond whatever it says that she actually had at the back of our mind. Thank you very much, Bolanle, for joining up. The second group of people we're going to talk about is the people of Israel when they got face to face with the Red Sea. You know, honestly, at that point in time, faith was the last thing at the back of their mind. Guess what? They told Moses that, Moses, weren't there other graves that you could have left us back in Egypt, that you have to bring us to die in the desert? I mean, that you have to bring us to die in the desert. You've got the Red Sea in front, and right behind us, you got the Pharaoh's army all coming up. Guess what? God still did the miracle of parting the Red Sea. Now we go straight into the Bible. We're going straight into the times of Jesus. The first guy we're going to look at is the paralytic who was at the bedside pool. So Jesus goes to meet him and asks him, do you want to be healed? Guess the answer the guy says. The guy says, well, you see, when an angel comes and stirs up the water, and when I try to get inside there, somebody else gets in front of my game, and basically I'm not able to get healing. And Jesus was like, get up on your feet and go back home straight up. And the guy got his healing. Guess the second guy I'm going to talk about, who Jesus also had an intervention with, it actually started with a sort of Bible study that he and his disciples were doing. And then the next thing, Jesus Christ goes to the man and tells him that, look, guy, I want you to put mud on the guy's face and tell him to go to the Siloam River to go and wash his face. Now, the thing here is this: you have to realize that all these four stories that I've just given you, actually have different reasons. For example, the reason why Sarah got the miracle of a child had to do with God's plan to create a new family that was going to uphold the integrity of God, that was going to uphold and fulfill what God wanted. You know, God was telling, in that same chapter of verse, God was saying to himself, he says that, look, how can I hide from Abraham what I am planning to do, seeing that he's going to command his children in the fear and knowledge and work of God? Meaning that part of the reason why God actually gave the miracle of Isaac had very little to do with Sarah. The second which we are going to look, which I gave, was the story of the people of Israel in front of the Red Sea. Thank you very much, Solu, for joining. In front of the Red Sea. Now, the reason why God did that miracle had very little to do with them. It had primarily to do with the promise God had made to Abraham in Genesis chapter 15, that, look, I'm going to bring back your descendants from the land of Egypt and bring them to the land of Canaan. Now, Jesus Christ, when he came to the case of the lame man in the pool of Bethesda, it was Jesus looking for an opportunity to, one, teach people about the fact that, look, you could do God's work on Sabbath day. Number two, that, look, there is equality between him and Jesus and God. I know that was one of the things that really piqued the ire of the Jews, that Jesus Christ was equating himself to God. And then when you go to the blind man that Jesus Christ healed at the pool of Siloam, the reason why he had that miracle, there are actually three reasons which I could pick up. The first reason, Jesus Christ wanted to remove that theology that we have at the back of our mind, that, look, bad things happen because people have sinned. Because here the disciples started and said that, look, oh, who sinned? Is it this man or his parents? And Jesus Christ said, no, it doesn't have to be a sin. That sometimes things like this happen so that God's glory can be shown. The next reason is, yes, the first one which we started with, the reason that God did it was so he could show that, look, it is possible for you to do God's work on the Sabbath day. And then the third reason, to teach people about spiritual blindness. Thank you very much, Bode, for joining. So you can see all these reasons that, as it were, God did these miracles had very little to do with these people, which was the reason why I started with two reasons you have to remove at the back of your mind. Number one, sometimes it is not your fault. Number two, sometimes it is not because you don't have faith. Because in these cases, most of these people that we just went through, they really didn't even express faith. Sarah, in the example, actually laughed and was like, hey, I'm going to become a mama. Yabba dabba do. That ain't going to happen. And that's even why she named her son Isaac. Laughter. Now, we're going to go straight into the meat of tonight's conversation, which is the question that we started with. Why is it that God will not give you a miracle? Now, number one, God might decide he doesn't want to give you a miracle because he wants to give you a new perspective about the things that are happening in your life. Now, I'm going to go a bit personal. There was a time in the life of the business that I was leading that we were trying to chase a couple of fundraising options, and the funds that we were trying to raise were not coming through. And I can still remember going into that particular new week, I was actually concerned. That's the word. I was concerned about the business and everything. And Sunday evening, I'm actually sitting down in my living room watching TV. And I just felt God trying to call my attention. I was not as good as Samuel, that Samuel stopped everything and said, speak for your servant hears. I actually dilly-dallied a bit. Eventually, God got my attention. And God told me one thing. He said, look, Tola, you're going to get enough funds to pay whatever it is that you need to pay in this coming week. Guess what? I didn't get as much as I would have wanted. And I actually didn't close the fundraise that we were trying to close. But what I was able to see, it gave me a new perspective that, look, God was providing, as it were, in little trickles, such that we were able to meet the most important payments we needed to make at that point in time. It didn't catch the big one that I was praying for, the miracle, but God decided he didn't want to give that miracle of the big one I was asking for, and decided that, look, he wanted to give me the new perspective of solving whatever small one which I was at the pace at which I was getting wherever the funds were coming from. That's the first thing. Sometimes God decides he will not give you a miracle so that he can give you a new perspective, give you fresh eyes to see the things that are actually around you. Number two, God refuses to give you a miracle because he decides he wants to grow you. Yes. Now, still going back to the same situation that I was discussing. During that same season of life in my business, guess a couple of skills that I developed. I learned how it is to motivate the staff that were working with me when the business was really going down. And at the same time, it also helped me to develop my ability to see new opportunities in places that did not exist. There was someone who told a story about a time in his working career that where he was working, the salary was really, really pretty low. And God did not give him the miracle of getting a new job that paid him the wow salary that would have, as it were, solved all his problems. Guess what God gave him? God gave him the wisdom such that whatever the small salary that he was getting, he was able to sustain and live through conveniently. You understand? Facing the most important thing. When he tells the story, he said God made him smarter and he made him sharper. And the truth is this: sometimes that's the way God decides. He decides he's not going to give you a miracle because he wants to grow you. He wants to make you sharper. Now, the final reason why God may decide he doesn't want to give you a miracle is to give you a better appreciation for the gifts that he has already given to you. Number 3, God may decide he doesn't want to give you a miracle so that you can have a better appreciation for the gifts that he has already given to you. I'd like to take an example straight from the Bible, and it's the story of the people of Israel. The Bible records that once they got to the boundary of Canaan, God stopped raining manna. Literally, they ran out of manna burgers, whatever type of manna variations, manna bread, manna burgers, they stopped eating it. And what were they eating? They were eating the produce of the land. And the thing here is this: if God had not stopped the miracle of manna, they probably would still have only been focusing on manna, forgetting all the other gifts that God had provided within the land of Canaan. I'm going to use another example. This is actually a testimony by a pastor who shared it. Now, he said that there was a time in which they were doing a 21-day fast, and his daughter-in-law had been doing that fast. The daughter-in-law and the husband, they've been believing for having other children. They've had 2 kids, and after the 2 kids, they've actually had 2 miscarriages. I think, 2 miscarriages, but they really wanted kids. And one of the things she said when she was doing the fast, she was like, God, I really would like to have kids. And what I really would appreciate is, God, I would want you to give a word to me, and whoever it is that you're going to send to bring that word to me, let that person be someone that is at least connected to me, close to me, related to me. And as it will turn out, on the last day of the fast, the pastor in question, he said he mounts the stage to preach. And as he mounts the stage to preach, he hears God tell him clearly that his daughter-in-law is pregnant. That was the exact word that he heard. So he said later that evening, when they all met together to break fast and to pray and to enjoy fellowship together, he said, hey, I have an announcement to make. Everybody was like, okay, so what's he going to say? He said, oh, she's pregnant. He said, everybody laughed. Was like, whoa. I said, no, I'm serious. She's pregnant. And it was like, no, you're joking. But, it was like, are you really serious? The guy said, yes, I am dead serious that this is something that God told me. He said, while he was sitting there, he could see the look on the daughter-in-law's face that there was something that, oh, man, what is this? But anyway, the daughter-in-law and the son, he said before they left the house, they actually came to meet the dad, and they were like, are you really serious about this? He said, yes, I'm serious about this. This is something that God told me clearly, that she's pregnant. He said, well, okay, anyway. He said as they were going back, as the daughter-in-law and the husband, as they were going home, he said that was how they were talking. Then the daughter-in-law actually told the husband that, hey, this is what happened. This is what I asked God for. He said the son was like, how could you ask God that kind of a thing? Don't you know my dad? Anyway, because of the urgency, the fervency, and the fervor which the pastor said it, they decided, let's go and meet a doctor. So they went to see the doctor. When they went to see the doctor, guess what the doctor said? The doctor said, you are not pregnant. And not only are you not pregnant, but your progesterone level is so low that you cannot conceive. So, well, anyway, the doctor says, if you are really sure that you really want to get pregnant at this season of life, I would recommend you start taking medication so that you can raise your progesterone level to the right level. So, give or take, guess what? Later on, they go and visit the doctor just to check if the levels are up. And by the time they go in to see the doctor, guess what the doctor said? You're pregnant. Huh? You're pregnant, and you are actually 1 month and 6 days pregnant. Huh? What's this? As it turns out, the day they came to see the doctor, that they came to see the doctor was 1 month and 5 days late. The day which they had met with their dad, which their dad had told them that word was 1 month and 5 days to the exact, meaning that the daughter-in-law was actually pregnant by 1 day. But guess what? God wanted her to have a better appreciation of the gifts, and the gift in this question is the gift of medicine. And that was what, because the truth about it is that if he had not gotten that word and they had not gotten to the doctor, they probably would not have known they needed to start taking progesterone, which eventually helped them to actually keep this pregnancy, unlike the 2 previous miscarriages. And this is one thing which we have to learn to embrace, that there are sometimes God decides he doesn't want to do the wow, earth-shaking type of, for example, in this particular case, couldn't God have decided that, look, he wants her to get pregnant without she having to go to the doctor and take progesterone? Yes, she could have had that situation, but God decides that, look, because I want you to have a better appreciation for the other gifts, and one of those other gifts is the gift of medicine. And I know there's been some sort of dichotomy within Christian cycles that when people think about medical profession, you're like, oh, don't believe the reports of the doctor. Don't believe what the doctor says. Yes. The problem here is this. We're not saying, and the reality is that it shouldn't be a case of you don't believe what the doctor says. We're simply saying, don't hang your life solely on what the doctor says. Yes, there have been some misrepresentation. But one thing you have to realize is that it is God that gives doctors the wisdom. Literally, all wisdom on the face of the earth comes from God. Isaiah chapter 28, verse 29, it says, the Lord of hosts is an excellent teacher. He gives the farmer great wisdom. If God gives the farmer wisdom, how much more every other field? I've only just used the doctor in this particular case, but the same thing applies to the scientist, the same thing applies to the accountant, the same thing applies to every single profession, because it is God that is the source of all wisdom. Yes, I've gone a bit longer on this particular point, and the reason why I've gone a bit longer is because until we learn to appreciate the gifts that God has provided in everyday life, we may never truly experience the full life that God wants for us. And the gifts that God has provided for us in this life are gifts that exist even outside the context of the Christian church. Because everything that was created by God and for God. And because of that, they all have a purpose within the scheme of things for God. And so for every one of us, we need to learn to embrace that gift. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, buddy. I'm going to run through the 3 reasons that I said once again that why God may decide he doesn't want to give you a miracle. Number 1 reason is, because he wants to give you a new perspective of how you should do life, a new perspective about the things that he's bringing your way. The second reason why he may not give you a miracle is he wants you to grow up. He wants you to grow in your wisdom. He wants you to grow in the way in which you handle situations. Number 3, he wants you to have a better appreciation for the gifts that he has already surrounded you with. And with that, we come to the end of tonight's Saturday night conversation. Thank you very much once again for joining me. If you are discovering us for the first time, we always have this conversation every Saturday, and every Saturday the time is 8 p.m. West African time, that's 9 p.m. Western European time, and 2 p.m. Central time. So thank you very much. I want to wish every one of you guys a wonderful weekend and a great time of fellowship in church tomorrow. Thank you very much.